Hi everyone, it's a pleasure to join this conversation and I'm happy to share my thoughts on risk culture because I think it's probably one of the most important topics in risk management. It has been for a while and it's been neglected, and I think it's a really good timing that we actually start talking about risk culture a lot more. Now this is a really good question. Do I think risk practitioners spend enough effort on the risk culture and the people side of risk management? Well, my answer is absolutely not. And the reason behind this is actually pretty simple. Um, Risk managers are humans like everybody else, and unfortunately, we have as humans a tendency to do things that may be easier and may bring us short-term benefits, but are probably not the most ultimate thing in the long term. And this is why I think risk managers don't spend enough effort on risk culture. It's because risk culture is a really slow burning process. It's it's a process of changing the mentality of people, and not just any people. I mean, we're not talking about students like me educating students in the business schools. We're talking about executives that have 20, 30, 40 years of top flight experience, really rich people most of the time, and they have their own set way of thinking, and changing that is a huge task for anybody. And given that risk management profession has been growing in popularity lately, there are a lot of risk managers that really don't come from a psychology, people understanding background. They're more mathematical, financial, which is an even bigger, which is a huge task for them to actually get into the people's minds and their heads and start twisting the way they look at business, the way they look at profit, that aggressive growth is good, but you do need to understand and see the risks associated with that, otherwise you're pretty much shooting yourself in the foot. So absolutely not enough time most risk practitioners spend on risk culture. And this is, again, so what I'm sort of getting at, this is not because risk culture is something ambiguous and unknown. I think it's actually much more simple than that. I'm pretty pragmatic person. I think practitioners spend not enough time on risk culture because it's just too difficult, because it's much more difficult than doing risk assessments, than drafting up risk reports, than doing project risk reviews, and pretty much 99.9% of other things that risk practitioners do most of the time. And this is very unfortunate. I'm hoping today to share some things that must be done in any organization regardless. And it's not as if some organizations have better risk culture than others. That's actually not quite true. I'd say almost every organization has a really poor risk culture, and it may look like it has a good culture because it has good disclosure in the annual report, or they talk about risk at the board meetings, but really, I mean, this happens sometimes infrequently. Sometimes when people talk about risk, they don't really talk about risk management. They just pay lip service to the risk champion or the risk sponsor. So I think risk culture is a fundamental issue, and we are where we are at the moment. And I mean, risk culture is a very little known topic. I've purchased and read recently most of the books that are available on risk culture, and off Amazon. And let me tell you, I mean, they're all really poor. I was amazed at how little guidance, concrete guidance there is in the world around risk culture, which is very unfortunate because I think this is probably the only thing that risk practitioners need to be spending their time on. And throughout this conversation, I'll try to share what I'm doing at our company, at our private equity, huge nanotechnology private equity fund. And this is what I've been doing at other companies where I worked, and this is what I'm sort of trying to do when I teach risk management at Russian business schools. So I'll share my thoughts, and obviously you can make up your mind. But I think this is fundamentally important. This is a critical topic, and it's a very good timing that we get together globally to talk about this. So let me start, before I sort of give you my few steps or few things that need to be done to promote better risk culture. Let me answer this one very simple question. If there was one thing, one advice that I would give risk practitioners to reinforce and build and improve the risk culture, that would be this. And this is very critical. Get involved. Get involved in absolutely everything. Get involved in goal setting. Get involved and bring, I mean, when I say get involved, I hope you understand. I mean, get involved and bring your risk perspective. You, unlike, I'm talking to you as the risk practitioner. You, unlike many other executives, have a unique thing in your mind that you are constantly scanning the horizon for threats, risks, and other underwater stones that may impact on the business. No matter what you may think, but other people don't really do that. And I mean, I know that because I teach at quite a few business schools, and every week dozens of senior leaders come through my courses, and my sort of presumption many years ago was that if you have a lot of experience, if you're pretty successful businessman, then surely you must be managing risk really well. But that is just not the case. People manage business the way they manage business, and it's very uncommon for them to actually scan for the risks, see what the threats are, analyze, pause and analyze them. It's just not how many businessmen do business these days, which is very unfortunate, because and this is what you need to understand, you are probably one of not many people in the company that possess the necessary skills to pause and scan for threats and analyze, what can go wrong, what are the opportunities, what are the risks, and more importantly, is there anything that can be done today to avoid all those risks in the long term? Or you can also see what is being discussed and agreed and done. Does that actually help you solve only the immediate issues, or does it also reduce the risk in the long term? Because this is one of the most common things. Many executive decisions that are made, they help to reduce risk right here and now, which is good naturally. But you're kind of missing the whole point that just because you've shifted the risk from today to 2 years from now, that doesn't mean you've managed the risk. That just means you moved it in time, and in 2 years' time, or in a year's time, or in 6 months' time, it will probably a much bigger threat, and it will be too late to deal with it. So a very important thing for you to get involved. And here are just a few things that you can get involved in. It's obviously the goal setting. It's obviously the budgeting side and planning. It's obviously the decision making. It's absolutely necessary to be the reporting side. Any status, performance reports, any quarterly, weekly status updates, there needs to be a risk element in it. You need to get involved in the corporate education program. You need to get involved in the dialogue between the executive and the board and the audit committee and the risk committee, if there is such. You need to get involved in the conversation between the management and other stakeholders, investors, etc. So my one advice would be for any risk manager: get involved. Get everybody speaking the word risk. Risk this. Make as many processes as is possible risk-oriented. Make it risk-based procurement, make it risk-based internal auditing, make it risk-adjusted performance, and so on. And I mean, this takes time. It's understandable, but take slow steps. Don't give up. Be ready that nobody is sitting there waiting for you to introduce your risk insights into their process. I mean, they're happy with the procurement and the budgeting and the goal setting process as it is at the moment, but that's not good enough, because your job is to make sure that risk is part of everything the business does. So my advice again would be get involved as much as possible, and it takes some bravery, you know, because it's difficult stepping out. Well, it's not probably not the right word. It's not difficult, but it is a tough task stepping out of your office and going and seeing other people. I do office rounds every day. I go from office to office, say hello, have a conversation, and my God, how much I find out by just doing the rounds around the office, saying hello to our strategy department, to our finance department, seeing how I can help, how I can get involved. It makes a world of difference. Now, here's also another interesting question. Do I think board and executive education in risk culture is needed? Well, I have mixed feeling about this question, to be honest. My immediate response is absolutely yes. I mean, it's obvious. Education, training is necessary for two reasons. First, don't make an assumption, I mean, not for a second, don't make an assumption that executives and board members understand risk. Some do, but there's probably equally as many senior managers that understand risk in a way that is not aligned with any international risk management standard, that is not how you understand risk, and more importantly, it's not how you want them to understand risk. They think about risk in their own capacity, which is based on their history and previous experiences, which is fine, but it doesn't help you as the risk practitioner implementing the ERM system and building the culture in the company. So education is a good idea, because A, you need to teach people who don't know, and B, you need to reinforce the messages once in a while for everybody else who does know, but they tend to forget. I mean, no surprises there. Most executives forget about risk management very, very quickly, and you need to be very mindful of that, because this is important stuff. Just because you presented the company risk profile and you've agreed some action on mitigation 2 months ago at the executive briefing session, it doesn't actually mean that somebody will remember in 2 months. I mean, it happened to me just a week ago. So reinforce the messages all the time. So one side of me says absolutely yes, risk culture education, risk management education for the senior management is absolutely a must. Now the other side of me though says that I'm not so sure, because realistically, I mean, I've been involved not only as the head of risk at various companies, I've also been a risk consultant for quite a few years in many countries, and part of the services that I've delivered was educating executives in risk management, and the reality is it is actually pretty difficult to get the executives in the room and bring in the speaker of the caliber that will actually engage with the most senior managers. It sort of varies from business to business. I mean, medium-sized, small businesses, it's pretty simple. I teach them all the time through the MBA programs. But think of a large government-based corporation, for example, where all the executives are, ex-politician, really high-profile people. Yes, they tend to be quite arrogant, by the way. So, teaching them something is a bit of a challenge. So while I think you definitely need to try and start this conversation and see whether you can make it happen. If you do, then that's an absolute win. But you just need to be mindful that maybe it won't work, or you'll get people but they'll be sitting in their iPhones, doing the work, or constantly running in and out, and obviously you need to keep it brief. So it may not bring all the value that you intended it to bring, which is unfortunate. And that's why I think while board and executive education is a good idea, I think there are other things that will reinforce risk culture in a much more meaningful way than just education. So let me just repeat it again. Risk education is a good idea and you absolutely need to try this. But there are other things that I think would reinforce the risk culture within the company in a much more meaningful way. And obviously you need to try those as well. So let me share with you some of the things that I think could promote the understanding of risk culture in any company in a much more meaningful way. There are answering the question what I think could promote risk culture in pretty much any company, and this is very important stuff. Risk culture could be reinforced and built in absolutely any company in the world, and there are few steps that I think could be taken by any company, any executive, any risk practitioner, and those lessons, they could be applied to the corporation overall, to the business unit, to the team, to the project team, to a small group within the company. That doesn't really matter. I mean, risk culture could evolve in any part of the business, and obviously we're all striving towards making risk culture is an enterprise-wide thing, but that's a matter of time. So there are a few things that I think could really reinforce risk culture. And I mean, they're simple things, and that's the whole purpose. Risk culture is pretty straightforward stuff. And the simple thing is, I'll try and count them. This is the first thing that you, as an individual, in any case, you need to do that every time. And this is it. Ask the question about risks. This is as simple as that. Whenever anybody brings you any decision to be made, any initiative, any project, any performance report, ask the simple question: what are the risks involved? And just sit back and look at the person and wait for them to respond. You will be amazed. I mean, obviously, depending on the person's understanding and knowledge and existing risk mentality, it could be either a good, meaningful conversation, or it could be a load of excuses, nonsense, and just absolutely random things. Either way, it is either super funny or be quite useful for the business. But nevertheless, I mean, ask this question once, see how it goes. Probably won't go very well. Ask the question twice, third time, fourth time, and every time somebody brings you something waiting for the decision to be made, ask them, what are the risks involved in this? I mean, I've seen work in an amazingly effective way when we have the chair of our board sitting at the executive meetings from time to time, and whenever somebody presents a new investment project or a new investment opportunity or a change to an existing investment opportunity, he would just ask, well, what are the risks involved? Share with us what you think the risks are and how are you dealing with them? I mean, are we accepting the risk, or are you actually proposing some sort of action plan that we can do? I mean, this works wonders. So my first thing to promote risk culture would be get the senior managers asking the question. And if you are the risk practitioner, this is your job to get in the executive's mind and make them start asking this question, because this is very important. Now, another thing that will help promote the understanding of risk culture is naturally education. I mean, this is quite important stuff. You need to become friends with HR pretty quickly, and I mean, this is sort of goes back to my comment of getting involved. Getting involved means becoming friends, real friends, with most of the managers, heads of business units, that especially the supporting function. If you remember the 3 lines of defense concept, we have the first line, which is the business, the second line, which are all the supporting functions, HR, finance, security, risk, what else? IT, and the third line, internal audit, and the board. Now, you need to become friends with everybody in the second line of defense and the third line of defense. That must be a given. So when you become friends with HR, here's the thing that you need to get involved with, and that's the second thing that helps building the risk culture. Get involved in the education planning and training needs analysis for the organization, and sell to them risk management as not a process but as a competency. Risk management is a competency. It's the way people think and look at business and make decisions and take action. And what you need to understand, it's a competency that majority of the businessmen at the moment don't have. They need to be taught that new competency. It's a new and quite a unique competency. Hence, you need to integrate risk management into some sort of personal development plans for the staff. Maybe do an online, for example, this is what we've done. I've promised that I'll share some of the things that we've done. On our corporate website, we have a page dedicated to risk management, obviously. And from time to time, not only do I do classroom training for all our junior, middle, and senior staff, I also record those trainings. I cut them in little chunks and make them very user-friendly, and I post them on our internal website. So any new staff member, any existing staff member can log in and not only download the latest copies of all our risk policies and templates, but they can also view the slides from the presentations or the video recordings of the presentations, which is always useful. So the second thing, I'll remind you, the first thing is ask the question, what are the risks? The second thing is get risk management in the training programs, so it's not your initiative every time, it's actually part of the global HR initiative. Now the third thing is, and this is pretty critical, you need to break the mentality that risk management is something standalone from the normal business. And unfortunately, the most common theme that I still get from some of the executives is, why do we need to talk about risk management? Because what we do every day is managing risk anyway. How is risk management different? It sounds pretty logical, yes, but unfortunately that is completely not so. It is completely untrue. The truth is, when business makes everyday decisions, they take into considerations only the risks that are absolutely obvious, that are front of mind, that they see. The reality is that by the time they make the decisions, they haven't had enough chance to analyze and think about the plethora of risks that affect this decision, but it's not obvious right this second. So risk management is critical. I personally believe with all my heart that risk management is absolutely necessary for any successful business. So to sort of break that mentality that risk management is either something completely separate from the business, it needs to be done once a quarter or once a year even for the annual report disclosure or something of the sort, or the internal audit planning, which is ridiculous. To break that mentality that it's either something completely separate, or to break the mentality that it's actually part of everything that we do anyway, and we don't need to think about risks in any more than what we do at the moment. To break that mentality, you absolutely must link risk management to existing planning and budgeting process. Make it a step in between the goal setting and the budget. You've got the goal setting, you've got the operational plans on how to do it, and you must consider the risks at this stage. You must consider, well, what are the risks that are not going to allow us to do our strategic goals? And obviously there are plenty that will not make it happen. That will affect all the wonderful targets that the executives have set themselves. So third point is, and make that link risk management to planning and budgeting, and make this link absolutely obvious. I mean, not only make it obvious in your risk management framework document, but also make it obvious in the planning and budgeting procedures. The planning procedure should actually link to the risk management procedure and say that at this stage you need to stop and open the risk management framework document and do the steps that are outlined there, and then you come back to the planning process. So this is my third thing that that is absolutely crucial to promote better risk culture. You need to break the mentality that risk is something separate from the business. The fourth thing is experience sharing, and I mean this is what I personally do. First of all, obviously I allocate ownership for different risks to specific executives, but then I reinforce with positive messages when an executive has, or any manager for that matter, when they have identified the risks before it became too late, and actually done something. When they escalated, well, example in our life is any case when the risk owner would escalate the issue to the board risk committee and have an honest discussion about this risk and then take some sort of action. That we reinforce. I mean, we share that around the company in every way possible. That just to reinforce his ego, obviously to reinforce his behavior, that he's stepping up, he's escalating issues, he's actually trying to prevent and deal with that. So the fourth thing is positive reinforcement for every and any person who spent time on identifying and actually speaking and dealing with the risk before it became too late. So anybody who comes to you outside of your normal quarterly or monthly or annual risk management process, he needs to he needs to understand that he's a hero. He's very special for doing that. He's unique, and this is what I spent a lot of time doing, trying to reinforce with positive messages that anybody who's actually spent an effort identifying a risk, he must be reinforced with a positive message for that. And there are obviously many other things that could reinforce risk culture, but I'll just probably stop with one important thing: risk ownership. People really need to feel ownership behind the risks, and first, obviously, it will be met with some sort of skepticism. It will maybe even scare people. They will say that, well, this risk is not only mine, I can't own it because it affects other business units and their actions affect how this risk evolves, which is all fine, but I mean it's only a matter of time. Stand your ground. Sometimes you may even take a more directive approach. Get the CEO sign the document which will name every risk owner for every risk that has been identified, and use this document as an official document saying that, but you are the owner of this risk, so we need to have this conversation. And if you feel that you can't deal with that, we've got plenty of opportunity to escalate it to risk committee or so. So risk ownership is a really important thing. But there's also, there is one more thing that I want to share. The reality is, I mean, when I came to this company, the sort of risk management started building itself few weeks before I joined, and I sort of joined to take this and bring it to the next level. But there was one thing that was created before I joined the company, and I wasn't sure how I would use this instrument, but it became one of the strongest instruments in reinforcing risk culture, and this was Board Risk Committee. If you still haven't got one, you absolutely must discuss with the risk sponsor or whoever's sort of driving this at the executive level and establish one. We have monthly conversations for 2 or 3 hours every month. What are the risks, what are the issues, how are we dealing with them, and not only me reporting on the statuses, but the risk owners come and report to the other executives on how the risks are managed. And one of the probably most interesting things was we have the board risk committee and the board audit committee. And the audit committee has a slightly higher status because it has a lot of independent directors on it. But for the last 4 meetings, we've been running both the board risk committee and the board audit committee together, and that has been an amazing change. I mean, this was the external perspective on the audit committee and the internal perspective on the risk committee. They brought together and talked about, what are the issues, what are the risks, and are we doing enough to mitigate them. So this was not only an amazing experience, but this was also a huge reinforcement for the risk culture, because now only the risk owners feel that they're not reporting within the company. They have to prepare, they have to know their stuff, they have to feel that they're behind the mitigation actions that they're proposing, because they're discussing that with external independent directors that sit on the board and make very important decisions. So overall, this is what I feel about risk culture. Risk culture is a critical topic, and I'm really glad we've got this opportunity to discuss it. So thank you very much for listening. I'm happy if you write questions in the comment boxes below. I'll obviously try and answer them. Thank you very much.